There will be some other parents joining us, most likely, as they commute over here, but I want to make sure we make best use of our time. Quick heads up that Minuteman Media Network is filming this talk tonight. So if you want to recommend it to your family members or to friends, it'll be shown in the near future on our local cable access channel. Also, you've gotten index cards given to you where we're hoping that if you have any questions that really arise in you as you listen to Dr. Evans' talk, that you will jot them down, and we'll try to collect them towards the end and bring them to her, and suddenly she'll magically be able to go through all these index cards, categorize them within seconds, and then speak to the questions. But she's a professional at this, and she's nodding her head that she can, so feel welcome to do that. This is a wonderful tri-town collaboration from the Boards of Health of Concord, Carlisle, and Bedford. And I want to introduce Susan Rask for a moment, who's going to say a few words about, she comes from the Concord Board of Health.
Thanks. Thank you all for coming. It's really nice to see everyone be so concerned about this topic. And thank you, Sally, for putting the meeting together. And thank you, Dr. Evans, for being willing to take your time to speak to us all about this important topic. So before we get started, I just want to make a brief announcement. The Concord Board of Health is very concerned with the recent surge in teen vaping, which is undoing decades of successful public health efforts to reduce the use of tobacco and nicotine. The board has a long-standing commitment to tobacco control and reducing youth use of tobacco, and has enacted regulations going back to the 1990s to reduce smoking in public places and youth access to these products. Most recently in 2014, the board enacted a regulation, which is in effect today, which among other things prohibits the sale of flavored tobacco except for mint and menthol flavors, and raised the sales age to 21 to purchase tobacco and vaping products in Concord. But in response to the surge in teen vaping that we've seen in the last couple of years, the board is considering further revisions to its existing regulation. And there are two major provisions to what they're considering doing. One, they would prohibit the sale of mint and menthol tobacco and vaping products, since research shows that these are often gateway flavors that teens first use when they begin vaping, and smokers use when they begin smoking. And then the second provision would restrict the sale of all tobacco and vaping products to adult-only stores, where entry would be restricted to those over the age of 21. So the Board of Health is going to hold hearings on the proposed regulations. The hearing dates are Monday, November 18th, and Monday, December 16th. The hearings will be held at the Department of Planning and Land Management Building at 141 Keyes Road at 7 p.m., and the board certainly encourages everyone to attend.
Thank you, Susan. So this collaboration, as I mentioned, is funded by the CHNA 15, which is Leahy Clinic, who is supporting work for the Boards of Health of Concord, Bedford, and Carlisle to respond to vaping and the epidemic of it. And they brought in Center for Parents and Teachers. I'm Sally Quinn Reed, I direct the Center for Parents and Teachers, to collaborate with them on the parenting education piece. And I just have to say that in the 32 years that Center for Parents and Teachers has been around, and the 16 years of that, which I've been directing it, we've never seen anything come up as an issue so fast and touch on the lives of so many young people as vaping has. And it's been very pernicious, it's very insidious, because it seems so benign initially, and what we know is that some families had been doing vaping even as kind of an activity, thinking it was just flavored water vapor. And so it's so much an issue of concern as we're increasingly learning the research on this, which is just unfolding. It's just happening in real time. So we're so thrilled to be able to bring Dr. Eden Evans here so that we can learn cutting-edge research so that you can have more effective conversations, whether you're a teacher in the classroom or a parent or a caring grandparent, caring adult in the lives of young people, so that you can be able to give them some facts, because there's a lot of misconceptions out there. Dr. Eden Evans is the founder and director of the Center for Addiction Medicine at Mass General Hospital and the Cox Family Professor of Psychiatry in the field of addiction medicine at Harvard Medical School. She earned her undergrad at University of Virginia, her medical degree at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, completed an internship in pediatric medicine at Children's National Medical Center in DC, and her residency in psychiatry at Mass Mental Health Center and Harvard Longwood Psychiatry Residency Training Program, where she was the chief resident. She's conducted a series of studies that have changed clinical practice guidelines for tobacco smoking cessation for those with and without mental illness. She has an impressive number and depth of research studies that you can learn all about if you go to centerforparentsandteachers.org, but it's a voluminous amount of research that she's done. She has extensive ties with the community health centers and that have made it possible to conduct large clinical and implementation studies. Dr. Evans has received 3 career awards from the National Institutes of Health and has brought in over $30 million in grant funding to Mass General for the study of addictive disorders and their treatment. She's mentored over 35 junior investigators, many with mentored career awards from the NIH as well. She leads an NIH-funded training program at Mass General and has authored well over 150 publications. So suffice it to say, we can learn a lot from her. Please join me in warmly welcoming.
I have a daughter who's a senior here and a son who's in 8th grade, and I'm delighted to be here. Really not for this topic, unfortunately, because this topic is really, it's taken us all by surprise, really. So I'm delighted to talk a bit about it. So vaping is technology that initially was promoted to help people quit smoking, which has been like a career-long interest of mine, is help people quit smoking. It does work to help people quit smoking, and if you don't quit, you've got a 50% chance of dying from a smoking-related illness. So this was a technology that I really was pleased to see. What I wasn't pleased to see was the way the products were marketed to kids and took off among kids in the last 3 years. So it's now super popular with teens who've never smoked any tobacco, and it's utterly transformed marijuana use amongst kids. And with acute severe lung illness rising, often in healthy young people with no other health problems, health investigators have called this an epidemic and have warned people to stop vaping, vaping anything. We know that because Governor Baker has banned all vaping products for 4 months while we try to figure out what is causing this illness. So I thought I would start off, because that's the super acute problem, talking a bit about that. And these numbers I have to update every day because the numbers are rising every day. So this data is a day old, so it's probably wrong by now, but over 1,600 people have developed this vaping-related lung injury. Every state but Alaska has had a lung disease case linked to vaping, and 34 people have died in 24 states. The Globe would have you think that it's a problem of older people. That is just wrong. 80% have been in people under age 35. 15% of cases have been in those under 18, so for whom they know they shouldn't legally have their hands on vapes, but we know kids. So what is vaping technology? You saw the table out there. I even saw a new one, the Prism. They're like cool, they're well engineered, they feel good in your hand, they're easy to hide. You can buy vapeware, like hoodies with a little pocket right here, so you can just sort of do this and vape, and then blow the vape down your hood, or they've got the strings that kids like to chew on their strings. Well, the strings now are like tubes linked to the vape device, and so they're vaping that way. You can buy this stuff on Amazon. Anyway, they're battery-operated devices. They heat liquids to deliver an aerosolized product. They deliver fewer toxic chemicals than conventional tobacco smoke. So we thought, okay, this is good. But they do expose users to ultrafine particles, heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, and other harmful ingredients. which we thought, well, compared to smoked tobacco, it's maybe reasonable. They're not regulated. And in addition to nicotine, what started happening a couple of years ago, e-cigarette devices can be hacked, and now you can just buy the pods or the little liquid-containing capsules to deliver a variety of other recreational drugs. The really common ones now are THC-based oils and CBD, as well as butane hash oil. These are all marijuana products. Since 2014, e-cigarettes have been the most commonly used tobacco products by youth, and from 2017 to 18, teen use of vapes in the United States jumped from 11% to 20%, and I'll show you now it's over 25% in 2019 of 12th graders currently use vapes. 12% use them daily. So it's just remarkable. And in the same period, the U.S. adult prevalence of e-cigarette use was 3%. So this is the kids are who's buying this. It's a long practice of the tobacco company, addict kids, because they will be your lifelong customers, right? And so we're seeing that again. So what is vaping-related lung injury? It's an epidemic of severe respiratory distress. Definitive cause is unknown. 80% who have fallen ill have used some form of THC vape, okay? Only 30% used exclusively THC. So you can see right off the bat, it's a little bit complicated to track down what is the culprit, right? Dank Vapes is this sort of pseudo name brand, although it's not really a name brand. It's not, Dank Vapes don't come from a single source, believe it or not. It's a distributed sort of network. One thing that's been early sort of identified as a potential contributing cause is something called vitamin E acetate. It's something that you can put in to solubilize the THC oil. THC is very fat soluble, so to basically dilute it in order to bring it into your lungs. But fat is not something you want to be breathing deep into the small passages of your lungs. Many of the people who were first ill developed what looked like something called a lipid pneumonia, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Anyway, 60% of people approximately used some sort of nicotine-containing vape prior to becoming sick. But only about 10% said they exclusively had used nicotine, and Juul was the most common. Juul was the most commonly used nicotine vape. 20% had used CBD-containing vapes, and the majority had some kind of flavor. So 75% had some kind of flavoring in what they were vaping. So you can see that these are the lines that the investigators at the CDC and the FDA are going down, trying to understand what it is that's causing this sudden uptick in vaping-related lung injuries. So understand that you put these different compounds in this little cartridge and heat them up together. Well, you may actually be producing new compounds, right, from the primary ingredients, and so that's another thing and these are not regulated, these aren't FDA approved, anything, it's the problem. So a specific device, a type of vaping liquid flavor, even possibly frequency of use or pattern of using may be important in trying to unravel why people are getting sick. What does it look like? And I'm going to talk more about vaping, but I just thought this is such a big problem. What does it look like? Why are we just starting to recognize them really since July of this year? Well, because it's looked like pneumonia, right? People come in, they got shortness of breath. Their pulse ox shows that they're not oxygenating their blood very well. They've got cough, but they've also got fatigue. They've often got a fever. They've got a high neutrophil count, which is a white blood cell count that goes up when you have an infection. Fever, chills, weight loss. So it looks like pneumonia, but antibiotics don't help. What does help is steroids. So glucocorticoids systemically seems to help. But what you see in all cases is a history of vaping, usually in the past 2 weeks, but some it's been 90 days since they last vaped, and bilateral infiltrates on imaging of the chest. So it looks like this ground glass pneumonia but it's on both sides. ICU is often needed, mainly to oxygenate folks. Even with intubation, and even ECMO has been used, which is extracorporeal oxygenation, basically a heart-lung machine. What's characteristic is that people come in, they get an extensive infectious disease, rheumatology, oncologic workup, and they're all negative. And so we're going back now through records, of people who were ill or died, before June of this year, to see were there more deaths that we did that before this was publicized that may be due to this. Any questions about the medical aspects of this acute lung injury? So the New England Journal of Medicine published a case series from Nebraska and Oklahoma, I think I can't, 2 states, and published an editorial this past month calling on physicians to discourage their patients from vaping, to say the least. So Governor Baker has been the most proactive of any public official, called a public health emergency, and with that authority made a 4-month ban on the sale of all vaping products in Massachusetts. Stated reason was to give public health officials a chance to figure out what's going on, to put a pause, to put, for once, public health ahead of economic interests of those selling this product. Immediately you slapped the lawsuit. Critics, including the Boston Globe, has said this hurts business. We've never made public policy in this country based on public health, I'm afraid. It's often been more, that's my editorial, but on commercial interest. The critics said this isn't fair to consumers. And I would argue, come on, people are dying. And this is leading people to go to the black market for vapes. And I would say, okay, if you're addicted to your vape nicotine, there are other ways to get nicotine, right? And you don't even have to go back to smoking. You can use a patch, you can use gum, lozenge, etc. And for THC or CBD, if you've got to have it, if you're addicted to your THC, there are edibles out there. You can even use a volcano vaporizer. You can buy it on Amazon and put plant material in it. It will heat it up and vaporize it for you. So there are ways other than these vape pens to get these products. So I think I'm hopeful that the 4-month ban will stick and that others will follow suit. Right now, Chicago and Los Angeles are considering bans on all vaping products. But otherwise, most places are only banning flavors, and this, as you mentioned, they're often excluding menthol and mint from those bans, which mint is the most common flavor used in this school, according to my daughter. That's what people are using, so kids are using. So while the cotton candy flavor is just so outrageous, clearly marketed to kids, it is the mint that's the most common now. So we take a step back, and vapes were touted as a safer alternative to smoking, and I actually bought that, and places around the world, it was a hot debate amongst public health officials, and our colleagues in the UK, we just don't agree because they're very pro-vaping. But the thing of it is they're marketed to youth. I mean, look at these Juul ads. This is not for your average 45-year-old smoker, right? These look like a flash drive. You can hold it in the palm of your hand. I hope you guys, if you hadn't looked at the table out front on the way in, you look on the way out, because these look like key fobs and like cool little gadgets. I would ask people last year, I'm sure you all know it now, but last year was a new word, new verb. Drooling was a verb, and people didn't know that, but it's a real craze now. And what's happened is we've seen a record, the fastest increase of any uptake of any drug known, since record keeping has been youth vaping. So, does this work if I use? Yeah. So in 2017, when Juul was just getting in the market, we had fewer than 5% of 8th graders, and just over 10% of 12th graders had used in the past month. So that's the definition of a current user. Within 1 year, that doubled, right? So now we've got over 20% of the 12th graders and 15% of the 10th graders using. This is so far in 2019. So we've got 25% of seniors nationally using vapes currently, and 12% of, over 10%, so about 12% of 12th graders report daily vaping. These kids are addicted, these daily vapers. So this is the most rapid uptake of any drug on record, as far as I know. And if I'm wrong about that, Randy Schuster told me that, that statistic yesterday. So she's a child neuropsychologist in my group who's going around to the schools. We've been surveying schools. We've surveyed over 3,000 kids in greater Boston and outlying towns. Since September, we're on track to survey 10,000 by the middle of December. This was for a study of the effect of cannabis on ability to learn. We've been paying kids to quit smoking pot for a month and assessing their ability to learn weekly and seeing, trying to quantitate that. And I'll show you some of those data, but we've been asking about other drug use, including vaping and alcohol use, and so that's become super high interest. And we're convening principals, they're starting treatment programs in the schools. So why do I care? You know, I mean, a lot of the kids are addicted to caffeine, maybe being addicted to youth vaping, you know, the sort of lung epidemic death on the side. What if it's not a big deal to vape nicotine, right? It's not as bad as smoking. Well, what we're finding is that parents think that this is just, they're just experimenting and kids experiment. But what we're seeing is the kids, if you ever vape daily, you have 75% chance of being a current daily vapor, right? So use is persistent. So this is how so they're not just messing around. And once they start vaping daily, they continue with that, right? And this is amongst the kids that we've surveyed. So middle schoolers to high schoolers. There's a strong association with other substance use now. I'm not saying cause and effect, but in animals, if you expose rats to nicotine for 2 weeks and then expose them to, say, cocaine, that cocaine is more addictive at the level of DNA unraveling all the way to preferring the part of the cage where you got the cocaine. So the different measures of addictiveness in animals. So nicotine exposure does increase the addictiveness of heroin and cocaine, substances that we don't think of as needing a lot of help being addictive, right? But it moves the process along. So what we've seen in the kids that we've surveyed this fall is that the high school kids who vape nicotine have a 25 to 40 times greater odds of using cannabis or alcohol regularly than non-users. Right? That's not a percent increase. That's 25 to 40-fold increase. And it's the same odds for daily vapors as for daily smokers. So gateway is, you know, gateway is totally passé. I'm not supposed to say that, but now we call it, you know, neuromodulation, because exposure to these stimulants does change the brain. And vaping is now the most popular route of marijuana use in high school. So that's been a 16-fold increase in 4 years. And it makes sense because the vapes weren't available. So you roll a joint in the past, but vapes are super popular because you can't smell them, they don't give you the bloodshot eyes so much, they're easy to conceal, it's sort of clean and neat. So that's what we're seeing. So is this working? So this was we were making these slides and one of the I call them kids, one of the research assistants, they're college graduates, but they work in our group, was pulled up and showed me this on her phone. So I was like, send that to me. So this was just the past few days. Because we were talking about launching a clinic. And so here we go. As kids get hooked on vaping, parents are desperate for a treatment that doesn't exist. And that's true. And we were just huddling and planning this youth vaping clinic. So we've opened our doors. We're figuring it out. Basically last week, this week, and next week, this new clinic. And we're working with schools. So our goal at Mass General is to offer an innovative behavioral and pharmacologic treatment and to try to establish clinical guidelines and standards of care, because they do not exist for vape tobacco in youth. And we've been in these schools, you know, we've gotten in the schools, it's not been a systemic effort, it's been whatever principal will meet with us and let us come in and do a survey, right? So it's been a patchwork. We started at Westford Academy because the mom of one of our research assistants had been a school nurse there for 30 years. So we went there first 2 years ago, and now we're at a number of schools. But just in the past few weeks, we've learned that there are new school-based behavioral treatments for vaping that schools are launching. And remarkably, they're not telling the parents when the kids come in. And that was initially kind of worrisome to me. And I asked the principal, and he says, look, I got 3 kids. I hear you. I got 3 kids. So, and I tell you what, I'd a lot rather the school bring them into a treatment program without me knowing about it than my kid not get treatment because he knows the school will tell me. So people have probably 100 different or 50 different opinions about that in here, but that's what's happening. And our goal is to understand links between vaping and health for kids, between vaping and academic achievement, if there is any, and with psychiatric outcomes. These are super important. And to develop prevention strategies for clinical and school settings, and to figure out for those who want treatment, to try to help them and try to figure out what works. So I would be happy to take some questions about nicotine vaping. I'm going to move on next to talking about cannabis and cannabis vaping, and then last have some slides about CBD, because that's everywhere, and I thought people might want to know what that is, and that's really common in vapes as well, though not as common amongst kids because it doesn't get you high. Sure.
In response to your comments about how you have a correlation between vaping and alcohol use, did you do the math in the other direction and find the correlation among alcohol use and vaping? Did you do the math in the other?
Yeah, there are far more vapors than alcohol users this year.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the correlation works in that direction. And again, it's a correlation, you know, but kids generally start nicotine first. So that's the first exposure. Again.
I ask because as a society, we have historically, in some cases, just accepted that upper teenagers will consume alcohol.
Yeah, no. So
I often think, you know, as adults, as parents, what message are we sending? If we say this is okay,
interestingly, this is a great point. So interestingly, say in Westford, you know, when I went to the school board meeting, that was our first place that we went with this school-based survey and intervention or experiment, really. People said they'd rather have their kids smoking pot than drinking. And they were all bought into the idea that kids would switch, which, no, they do both. Yes. And yeah, well, if you're drunk, you've got a 5 to 6-fold chance of crashing your car, but if you're stoned, you've got a 2 to 3-fold chance of crashing your car. Cannabis has impacts, which I'll show you, on human brain development that alcohol does not. And alcohol is a neurotoxin over time, but cannabis acts at the cannabinoid 1 receptors, which guide neuronal migration in maturing brains through age 25. So there's a specific reason why cannabis in kids is potentially harmful and responsible in one large study with 18-year follow-up for a drop in IQ of over 7 points for kids who used heavily in their teens. So there are some specific reasons why we're concerned about kids and cannabis. Anyway, nicotine too.
I have a medical question. What's the prognosis for the sick kids? And is there treatment for the lung disease?
So the lung disease, the treatment is steroids, right? Because what there is, it looks like a chemical burn, essentially, in the lungs on sort of cut sections, both from biopsies in people who survived and autopsies from people who didn't. We don't know yet because we don't know the denominator, if you will. We don't know the percent, of vapors who are getting ill, and we don't know the total number who've gotten ill, so we can't say the percent who've gotten ill who've died. Certainly, the episode of The Daily, The Daily, it's a podcast from the New York Times, today and tomorrow are on vaping. And I didn't get to listen to it, but I read a little blurb about it. The one today is about a lifelong smoker who's died, and it was earlier this year, basically where somebody from the Board of Health said, I saw him vaping at this fair or something and he died. Everybody's assuming it's tobacco-related illness, but I wonder if it's from the e-cigarette. His wife saying, I wish she kept smoking his Marlboros because this killed him. I don't think we know. Yeah, I just don't know. That's not very satisfying.
You said you know youth that are trying to quit. Can you speak a little bit about your experiences? Do you know youth that really are struggling to quit? Could they possibly come and speak to other kids?
Wow, that's a great. So sure. I mean, we could arrange that. We could potentially arrange that. Yeah. What do they do? Well, probably. What do they say?
Yeah, like what is their? Can you explain their experience? How
They can't quit. They can't give it up. They are yearning for it. They can't study without it. They're going through a pod a day, if not more. And a pod is, in this country we allow a pod to have 57 milligrams of nicotine in it. In Europe they cap it at 20 milligrams, right? So ours are super addictive. And people say, oh, but if it's a lot of nicotine, you'll just vape it more slowly. Well, but you don't. Yeah. So they take it by surprise. It makes them mad because they don't want anything controlling them, and they, instead of feel rebellious, they feel like a pawn of big tobacco. And now the new CEO of Juul comes from Philip Morris because he knows how to market a deadly product.
You said 57 milligrams. Can you, what's the equivalent to cigarettes?
So Susan, do you know how many, I should know this, what's the equivalent to cigarettes, 57 milligrams? It seems to me there's about 7 milligrams.
One Juul pod is equivalent to a pack of cigarettes. So if you're doing a pod a day, you're equivalent to smoking a pack a day.
I think each cigarette has 6 or 7 or 8 milligrams of nicotine, but it depends how hard you smoke it, how much you actually extract from the cigarette, and how much you leave in the ashtray, or whatever. Sorry.
So does that mean that is smoking a Juul as dangerous, more dangerous, less dangerous than smoking cigarettes?
It's not safe.
Because you haven't concluded yet.
It's a lousy idea to start unless you're a smoker.
And if you are a smoker?
I would go with a nicotine patch or gum or lozenge. There's some people, my dad, a 3-pack-a-day smoker, I'm from North Carolina. He's been on the gum since 2000. He has to go off of it every year or two for some insurance company physical for 2 weeks because they take it, they can measure the nicotine in his urine. They don't believe it's just from the gum. You do not want to be around him for those 2 weeks. He's irritable. He's so addicted. But there are other things you can use. You do not need any cigarette so if you're a smoker, no, don't vape. Use varenicline. Use patch and gum together. Patch and lozenge together to quit smoking. Yes, quit smoking.
But my question, I guess my question is just like, you haven't made conclusions yet about comparative dangers. In other words, they're saying it's less dangerous than smoking a cigarette.
I think before this lung injury situation, you could conclude that it was, but still you're bringing it's an unregulated product. The FDA has kicked the can, down for too long. So the ingredients are not regulated. They're not long-term safety studies. So why? to information, certainly not from people who look like me. They respond to, you know, their peers and what's in the media. So vaping hopefully will become uncool. It's not. No, it hasn't become yet. It's funny. I was picking up my son over at Damon Mill after an appointment, and I'm hearing, you know, vaping deaths, you know, across, you know, our 34th person has died now, and this one's in Nebraska. And I just put my window down because there's some guys vaping right there, you know, so turned up the radio, you know, but, yeah. So I'm gonna move on to, I'll take a question.
I was just wondering, in the situation where somebody died, is there been any follow-up locally in that community to see if people around that death, reduce the very big issue?
That's a great idea.
A death in the school,
Yeah,
does that say, hey, you know, it's uncool because our friend died?
I would hope so. I haven't heard anything.
Can you speak, so I know that a lot of the concern is around sort of the unregulated and harmful, you know, chemicals that are involved. And they're not, you mentioned not really being certain about like the dominant denominator, but just in terms of the long-term use of nicotine.
Yeah.
What are like the health effects of that you're starting to, you know, understand?
Yeah,
that we're
so
experiencing?
that's a great question. It's been debated, you know, and so for nicotine, gum, lozenge, nasal spray, and inhaler that have been FDA approved and around for a long time. So you can get a nicotine inhaler that's FDA approved. It's not cool like these devices out here. But again, people don't tend to pick that up as an abusable product because number one, they don't deliver the kind of hit that Juul developed, the sort of nicotine salt, this ability to, they change it so that it's more comfortable to inhale a much higher dose of nicotine so that in their formulation is more likely to be addictive to a novice and well tolerated by a novice, so not aversive, doesn't make you cough. Other than that, it seemed to be reasonably innocuous, certainly in older people. Nicotine does one thing, which is that it increases vascularization. So it may aid tumor growth, right? If you've already, but it's not carcinogenic. But if you combine it with tobacco smoke or if you've got a carcinogenic process started, it may help your body send more nutrients to that tumor so it can grow. The jury's out on that. Those data have been around for a long time. It's still sort of like inconclusive. So, and that's why I said I wanted to look. You know, that's why I got this, you know, we want to the third bullet here, understand the links between, you can substitute vaping for, you know, chronic nicotine use, started in kids though. That's different than somebody who's been smoking for a long time, and their health, their academic achievement, and their psychiatric outcomes, because it doesn't, there's reason to believe that it's not as innocuous as coffee, but we like to understand if it is. It's an active question. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk a bit about cannabis, because that's really behind it's what's in most people's vapes, you could argue. So I just sort of put together 8 points to sort of start the conversation and just talk a bit about it. So first, the most obvious, and it's super common, and it's becoming more common, right? So in past years, marijuana and hash has become far more common than basically all other illicit drugs combined. And marijuana is still illicit federally, so listed as illicit here. Over time, you know, tobacco use has become way uncool, and cannabis use has stayed up. It's actually been going up since the last version of this. And daily use is more common. So about 6% of 12th graders are daily users, and these data are several years old. 2018 for this one, so I think this is 2017 data. What we're seeing in Massachusetts, in the schools that we've been surveying, and again, we started in 2015 at Westford Academy, the percent of kids who use marijuana in the past 3 months has gone up, who've used it in the past week have gone up, who've used it daily has gone up, but also we've seen increase in alcohol use in the same period of time. So to speak to your questions, we're asking about all different drugs of abuse. The rate of alcohol increase is not quite as steep as sort of daily marijuana use. And this is once or more times a week, right? So it's not quite as steep of an increase. But you can see that cannabis has passed alcohol in terms of one or more times a week use. And as I alluded to, ongoing brain development makes teen use particularly risky for cannabis in a way that alcohol does not. I mean, alcohol, again, it's a neurotoxin. You can cause dementia with heavy use over a lifetime. But in people under the age of 25, I just tell them, look, it's worth the wait. Wait till you're in graduate school before you start using pot, because your brain develops. You're pruning during this age. My 12th grader, my 12-year-old, my 13-year-old has more neurons now than he ever will have. By the time he's 25, he'll have fewer, and it's sort of use it or lose it. And what you don't want, and it's exquisitely sensitive to your environment and what you do. And these cannabinoid 1 receptors do guide this migration. It's exquisitely sensitive, and it has a fair bit to do with who you turn out to be, right? If you are bathing the system in THC, which binds these receptors, you're going to lose some of that specificity, right? It just stands to reason. I'm seeing confused looks. Questions about this?
Is it THC and CBD, or is it just THC?
It's THC that binds the CD1 receptors. I'll talk about CBD in kids in a minute, but it's THC. All right, so teen cannabis use is linked with poor cognitive functioning, poor academic performance, and poor psychiatric well-being. It is not the sort of laid-back, cool, people who do this are mellow, all those stereotypes. What we're seeing is that if you're using cannabis in the schools, you're far more likely to report some sort of psychiatric problem. So it really is going together with people who are having trouble in other realms. Aggression, irritability, depression, anxiety, the whole gamut is what we're seeing. We had a we published a paper in December, and we got calls from all over the world. We were in the press all over the world, showing that kids did not respond, didn't recover within the first few days in terms of their cognitive performance after stopping using cannabis, and that those who had some kind of psychiatric problem had more withdrawal symptoms when we were paying them to quit. We paid them $600 to quit for a month, and they were able to stay quit, but their withdrawal symptoms lasted a full week longer than those without any psychiatric problems, which may be partly why people with psychiatric illness are more vulnerable to becoming addicted. Right? We've got more withdrawal, we may be more likely to use to sort of make that withdrawal feel better. All right, so these are data that I'm not going to be able to see very well. So this is from Jody Gilman's paper. She's in my lab, comparing addictive potential of different drugs. And what you see is tobacco is up there. Tobacco and heroin have always been the two most addictive compounds that we commonly deal with. And cannabis, what you hear about is this sort of 9% people who get addicted. But that's 9% of people who start as adults, people at age over 21. If you start as a teen, you're more likely to become addicted. That's true for all drugs of abuse. Almost, if you start drinking alcohol before age 14, you're fourfold more likely to develop alcohol dependence than if you start after age 18. And if you're ever a daily cannabis user in youth, in adolescence, your rate of becoming addicted is up closer to 25%. And Nora Volkoff, who runs the National Institute of Drug Abuse, quotes it as 25 to 50% because we don't know. So addiction is an issue, and vaping has become so popular for THC that, we really want to see what we see. We want to monitor what's happening amongst kids starting THC using vaping. So this is from a study we published this year. We see actually late onset marijuana users have no problem learning new words. They track right along with people who've never used, so there's controls on the top. People who started later in life, so I think that was 21 was the cutoff. But those who started as adolescents, it's been reported many times that they have poorer memory, and that's this measure here, how well you remember after a delay the words you learned after 5 tries. But what this study showed, this is out of our group, is that you actually learn fewer words to start with, and you never catch up. And this is early onset of cannabis use versus basically adult onset use. And this is estimated associations between frequency of cannabis use and mean depression scores in people age 15 through 30 after adjusting for a number of sort of socioeconomic factors that could impact the outcome. And so what you see is a very strong association between frequency of cannabis use and their mean depression scores. This is not normal. Please.
No, I'm confused on this one in terms of causation.
This is cross-sectional. They may be using because they're depressed.
Right.
Yeah. This is. But it just gets at the stereotype that it's laid back, people are relaxed, it's all cool. This is not causation, but it's associated with greater problems. Although the dose effect has been shown also, but still it could be.
The dose effect being the more you use, the more depression.
Yeah, and the higher potency, particularly with psychosis. So the high potency THC strongly associated with early onset psychosis. Yeah, and not just a psychosis when you're high. It's a psychotic illness.
A long-term psychotic illness.
So this is what we've been doing for a number of years, trying to study what happens with cannabis abstinence in high school students. So we were so struck by this paper by Madeline Meyer, who I'll briefly summarize this. She looked at the Dunedin study, which is a moderate-sized town in New Zealand, in which they captured 98% of live births and for assessment and assess the kids throughout their lifespan up to age 35 when she did the analysis. And so she's able to pull those data and look for people who started smoking pot or using cannabis heavily in their teen years or at all. And she showed that if you had persistent heavy use for three years, meeting criteria for cannabis disorder, you actually had a decline in IQ. And these kids were super well characterized right before they used. So for once, it's not a cross-sectional study. And she showed as much as an 8-point IQ drop in those who had persistent use in adolescence, and it didn't recover at age 35, even though a lot of kids had stopped using. So what we've been paying kids, and this first graph shows that they do quit using. So we bring in non-users, and we also bring in regular users. Mostly they use once a week or on the weekends, and we randomize those to either paying them to quit or just paying them to come in and do the assessments. And lo and behold, the ones who didn't get paid to quit didn't quit, and those who got paid to quit did, because we were tracking their urines. So THC sticks around in your urine for a long time, and that's why you see this curve of steadily reduced. This is creatinine corrected THC. And we didn't expect an impact on attention, so we looked at that and expected a learning effect, right? So as you take the same test week after week, you get a little better at it. And so there was no effect of abstinence on attention, and both groups learned just fine, did just fine on this acute attention task. But where we were looking is for memory. And what we saw is that the kids who continued to use cannabis did not get better on this verbal memory task, and those who abstained got better. In this cut of the data, they got better after a week of abstinence. So it's a really hopeful message. In the first cut of the data, they didn't get better until week 2. And this is an ongoing study, so we'll see. So this is a much more hopeful view than our early look at data. But if you're using every day, you don't have time to recover, right? My message back then is if you're using every weekend, you don't have time to get better. And these kids and their parents often, and a lot of these kids are using with their parents. They think, well, if I'm just smoking on the weekend, I'm fine for my trig test on Wednesday or whatever. And it's not 100% clear. Unfortunately, we didn't do daily measures or every 2 days. This is anywhere from 7 to 10 days after the abstinence. The number 4, I talked about this a bit. Teens with psychiatric comorbidities are more likely to use cannabis, and they're more likely to have trouble quitting. And they're more vulnerable to negative effects. There's a lot about that we don't understand. I'll give you just a little look at this. So this is from a study out of our group. We had people with no psychiatric illness that didn't use cannabis, and we did this memory task, and they were able to remember 65 words. Okay, it's the standard task, California Global Learning Task. Those who used marijuana but had no psychiatric illness learned fewer words and remembered fewer words. Those with major depressive disorder did about the same as those who used cannabis. But those who had major depressive disorder and used cannabis did worse on initial encoding, we call it, or learning those words, and in recalling those words. So there may be some vulnerability there. There's a lot more we need to know. This is just a little sliver of data. The cannabis our kids are being exposed to is far more potent than in prior decades. I think people understand that. Now, that the average, this is from the cannabis that's seized by federal agents, right, nationally, and this stops in 2014. The average is now 18% THC. When I was in college, it was 2%, right, and it was equal CBD with THC. Now, the CBD has been mostly bred out of the pot that people are using to get high. And it's all THC. And the novel forms of THC delivery are the norm now. In fact, vapes are the most common way of using amongst teens. They're hard to detect, and we really don't know much about the long-term effects of any of this. Right? We know a fair bit about not very potent weed, but what's around now, and this is dabs and hash oil are which is 95% potent. It's really hard to titrate dose. And this is happening in a societal context, as people have alluded to, that's replete with advertising that's increasingly not only permissive but encouraging. I mean, this is what you see when you leave Logan now, right? Weed maps. You can download weed maps, and I tell you what, the Globe is taking lots of advertising from weed maps, and you cannot believe what you read in the Globe now on cannabis. It's just biased time and time again. Dan Abrams and Naomi Martin in particular, they run This Week in Weed, which has now got a new name, the Daily Rip or something. This is the Boston Globe, right? But it's special cannabis reporters because it's a big business. So anyway, these are all messages that are out there, and the marketing, that's not. And then the marketing at kids. So MedMen, big operation, modeled on Mad Men for medical marijuana. It's this big New York firm, extremely slick marketing. YouTube. Anyway, this is the deal now. So we all, a lot of people, legalization and regulation really got conflated with liberal politics. You look at all Democratic candidates for president, they're all about legalize and regulate. And it really, that comes down to commercialization. And I would just like to make the point that it's failed in a number of ways. And I list sort of 9 of them, and I just ran out of room. So THC concentration is not being regulated. Higher THC has greater adverse consequences for addiction, psychosis, learning impairment, traffic accidents, and we're seeing there are no limits. And I've met with cannabis control commissioners. There are no plans for limits on concentration. The THC to CBD ratio has not been regulated well. In fact, it's all THC in a lot of products. And I tell you, if we have time, there are products that are marketed as CBD that I tell you are THC products. I can tell you a story, but if you want at the end. But so the higher this ratio, the greater intoxication in some, but not all studies, and you get more psychosis and more anxiety. Taxation has not panned out because the more if you tax it so that you keep it at, you price kids out, you end up with a flourishing black market. Oregon, one of the first legal states, exported more cannabis to non-legal states than they were able to consume. So they consumed what's thought less than half of cannabis that was grown in Oregon. So this is the black market's huge. Youth marijuana use, okay, it's only going to be for 21 and up, right, or 18 and up. But states with medical marijuana and recreational marijuana have the highest prevalence of youth use. People can go down to Brookline and buy up a bunch of product and come here and sell it to the 15-year-olds here on campus, and that's what we have happening. I hear through the grapevine. Criminal activity and crime statistics have risen, not fallen in legal states and right around places where pot is sold, the dispensaries. Minorities, this was supposed to reduce, the policing disparities for people of color, but there have been increased minority arrests, particularly for kids, because it's still illegal for under 21, and Colorado reported an increased rate in arrests for cannabis amongst Black and Hispanic kids. And there are few minorities involved in profits, even though you hear about the social equity program. And you see more school suspensions. Opioid overdose deaths are higher, not lower, in states with easy marijuana access. And person-level data show that if you've ever used cannabis, you're more likely to use non-medical opioids, become addicted to non-medical opioids. A majority of e-vaping associated lung injuries related to THC, not tobacco. And the teenage initiates of marijuana vaping is rising rapidly. So what can you do? To lower the risk in kids. Wait, please wait. I tell my kids, wait until you're in graduate school. I don't have a moral problem with cannabis, but it's bad for your brain when you're a kid. So I tell, avoid early use. I think that's the main thing. And if you're gonna smoke or use it, don't use the high THC strains. Those are clearly associated with more psychiatric problems, right? So you want to use lousy weed. Don't use K2 spice, the synthetic cannabinoids that you can buy on the internet that's made in China. They cause far more psychosis. These are full agonists at the CB1 receptor as opposed to partial agonists, which is THC. So they're far more potent. Avoid vaped products for the reasons we talked about. Avoid combustible products because it's not very healthy to breathe smoke. And be careful with edibles because potency can be way high. Stay off the road. You're not a safer driver when you're not. So I just wanted to have a couple of slides on CBD because there's a lot of confusion about THC versus CBD. THC is what gets you high. CBD is being studied now for a number of things, but you would think it was magic if you listen to people at parties. So what is it? It's in everything now. The sort of the backdrop, the photo we took at Whole Foods the other day. So CBD is kind of a diol. It's one of 80 phytochemicals that are commonly in marijuana. It's a component. It doesn't get you high. It doesn't seem to be addictive. So it's different from THC. And it's been federally legal since the Farm Bill in December of last year legalized hemp, right? Whereas it's different from marijuana because that remains federally illegal. And it's been put into like literally almost everything. Cosmetics, creams for babies, pet anxiety pills, or dog bones, fingernail polish. It's crazy. At Mass General, we studied pharmaceutical grade CBD that was derived from marijuana for pediatric seizures, and we led those studies, and it's now FDA approved. I'll talk about that in a second. So you can get FDA approved pharmaceutical grade CBD. So it does reduce seizures, and these were intractable in kids. So it's FDA approved for kids over age 2 years. But is it an anti-inflammatory? Does it improve sleep? Does it improve cognition? Possibly, and now we can study it. CBD is subject to federal regulation when therapeutic claims are made. So when you go in the Back Bay and you see that you can add CBD oil to your latte, and it might improve your aches, pains, and anxiety, that's being cracked down on now. You're not allowed to put CBD and make therapeutic claims. You're not supposed to put it in edibles, but it's in all sorts of things. And it's up to the local boards of health to regulate this. So we're very interested in helping people make informed decisions about CBD. It's fantastic. If CBD is therapeutic and has no or few risks, fantastic. But what if it's not? And it's chosen for a serious illness instead of something that does work, like depression. I actually wrote to the Denver Post a few years ago, a full-page ad of this strain is good for depression and that strain is good for depression. And there's no disclaimer anywhere. If you're suicidal, call Samaritans. If you go see your doctor. And I think depression can be a lethal illness. Would you like to put something on there that there are effective medicines out there? And they never wrote me back. I wrote twice. But we'd like to know the risks and benefits to guide our choices. And the way we do that is we conduct clinical trials, and we use known doses of known compounds, right? And we're beginning to do this for CBD. So the first trial is going to be CBD for low back pain. Now, as a psychiatrist, you might say, why are you doing this? But at Mass General, a friend of mine in the Department of Radiology discovered this protein that's made by, that's basically a sign of inflammation in the brain, and we can image it with PET scans. So we can give CBD to people, we can scan people, give them CBD for a month, and scan them again and see, can we see an objective change in a marker for illness that goes down and hopefully correlates with reduction in pain. And if it does, then we're off to the races. We will be very interested in looking at CBD, and again, known concentration, known purity for fibromyalgia, migraine, sciatica, major depressive disorder, and cognitive dysfunction and schizophrenia. So that's what we're doing. But what we're hearing about is people giving CBD to their babies. Pediatricians are at a loss hearing about parents administering the CBD to their kids. We have a big grant from the NIH, from the federal government, to look at medical marijuana, right? So we've enrolled over 300 people who wanted to get their medical marijuana card for anxiety, depression, insomnia, or pain. And we randomized them to get their card or wait for 3 months. And we followed them for a year. And we have had, in the first 80 who completed their 1 year, 30 people, all of them taking CBD from dispensaries in Massachusetts, had no detectable CBD in their urine at any time in the whole year. We measured monthly. So they're buying something, and they're using it on average 15 days of the month. So they're buying something that says CBD, but there's no CBD in their body. We also had 18%, or 18 of those 80 people, have psychotic symptoms. And I read one verbatim, I didn't bring it here, at the JFK Library a month or two ago, some people here were there, of a woman who was in our study. She was from a town not far from here. We advertised a lot on NPR for this study, so we got lots of people from the well-educated women from the burbs. That's a lot of who we got. We're in their 40s, 50s. She says, so I was taking CBD oil by mouth, and I had just been taking it for about a week, and I started to feel strange. I was driving my car, and I couldn't think, and I couldn't, the only way I found my way home was from the noises from the GPS. I was so worried that night or the next morning, I was so worried that I'd hit something or somebody that I went out and checked my car for dents. So this is somebody who's taking what she thinks is a medicine, but medicines usually you know what you need, you know how much, you know the dose, somebody's tested it, purity, and so this is available now. It's expensive, but I just wanted to go over some of the side effects, just because people think that it's harmless, and maybe when risks and benefits, if you've got intractable seizures, yeah, benefits outweigh the risks, and maybe for some other things, we hope so, but there are side effects. Like any effective medicine, certainly if it works in the brain, it's going to have side effects. And so, so drowsiness, insomnia, disrupted sleep. So you often see this, you either sleepy or you can't sleep, right? So sedation, malaise, weakness, decreased appetite, diarrhea, elevated liver enzymes, and a rash are the most common side effects. So those are pretty, you see those with most medicines. CBD does carry warnings about potential for suicidal ideation, agitation, new or worsening depression, aggression, and panic attacks. So, and this is something we're using 20 milligrams per kilo for this. So this is a big dose, a reasonable dose, whereas the dose in the coffee shop was 25 milligrams supposedly, right? So it's not a very big dose, but there's just no quality control for what's in it. So just to drive it home, because I just hope that people aren't giving this to their kids. So despite promising results from early studies, administration of CBD to kids is problematic, to say the least. There's lack of oversight regarding monitoring what is in each supplement. Lab testing of CBD to determine its contents is not mandatory in every state. It is not here. So the amount of active compound and other ingredients may be inconsistent from batch to batch and may be inaccurate. There are varying delivery systems that will affect absorption and bioavailability. So if you're rubbing it on your knee for knee pain, there's less of it's going to get in your body than if you're vaping it, smoking it, or eating it. So information is lacking regarding drug-drug interactions. Usually you want to know about this if you're taking any other medicine. And information regarding long-term use is lacking. So it's been studied in babies, and we're going to test it for a month. And CBD products right now, and there's a fight, this is all in the Globe too, they're in uproar because they're worried about the farmers who've planted CBD and hemp. But CBD products can't claim to have health benefits, treat disease, or be sold as a dietary supplement without FDA approval. So the FDA is cracking down, and Massachusetts has said that they will go along with the federal government on these regs. So even though you can buy gummies in the gas station, it's not supposed to be sold. And evidence is insufficient at this time to recommend its use for any of the things it's being used for, pending real research in human subjects to explore safe and effective dosing, and certainly use in special populations like kids and pregnant women and elderly. So I'd be delighted to take questions. I've gone on for quite a long time. For now, it's 8:15, but I'm happy to answer questions.
I'm going to walk around and see if anybody has questions written down on index cards. You want to, yeah.
It's a small enough group.
So I have a question about somebody who has the psychosis and is smoking.
Yeah.
What's the prognosis of being able to keep things under control?
So the question is who's got a psychotic illness and is smoking what?
Marijuana.
Marijuana. So super common. We know a lot about this, big epi studies, so that it's associated with a poorer prognosis, with more hospitalizations, with longer hospitalizations, with less likelihood of staying on all the meds, which may be the real problem. We counsel people to not use, and we try to help them quit. It's often hard because they don't. Often the response is it's not a problem, or it helps me. And certainly, now legal medical marijuana is not helpful for that messaging. I'm sorry.
I was wondering if you had any positive messages, like are there common characteristics of kids who don't use or want to quit? They're like, this is horrible, I'm going to tell my friends not to do it. Like, is there anything positive?
Absolutely.
Like, certainly there are some
So it's a great question. So the campaign for tobacco-free kids, I think, had the absolute most effective sort of ad campaign, and I think it's sort of in the culture a little bit. Around you think it's rebellion, but no, you're just putting money in the pockets of these guys in suits, and that's also it's big business, right? It's big corporations that are running the marijuana operations. It is not mom and pop. That's the persona, or not an advertising, that's the image they want to have. But it's big money, big business. Yeah. So independent thinking. I'm not going to just be here to make money for you. To be your pawn, to be used by you. I think is the and the kids who don't try, because trying these are quite addictive, especially for kids. So even trying is.
Thank you for all of this and for exploring this with us. It's really disturbing.
Well, it's predatory marketing. I think that really, I think is.
And most of us remember that, smoking was not an accident, and alcohol is neither. There are two questions. One, what is the social aspect of vaping? Because I'm missing something there, because it seems like it's being marketed more as a solo act. You can do it anywhere, you get away with it.
Yeah, it's
Versus the alcohol and communal pot smoking. Not saying that that's the way those happen, but in children, that tends to be, leading up to, I've heard of different way, a party, for instance, whether it's appropriate or not, is someplace where a bunch of inappropriate things or illegal things for that age group will be used. This seems like it's cut through all of that, gone straight to solo addictive behavior.
So entry level. So this starter pack is $50. So they're expensive. The jewels are expensive. So their status, their cachet. Yeah, they're cool.
But they're not done communally. What I'm saying is you don't go.
Well, you might pass around a jewel with cannabis in it. People don't tend to pass it around with nicotine in it. Sort of like your cigarettes. You don't tend to pass around.
Right. Okay. And then the second piece I have is in the studies you're doing, are there
And
any?
sorry, it's so new also that, I don't know that things are established. So
Is there any work being done in the private boarding or the college age, still teenagers, still potentially at greater risk or at greater risk, depending on whether you're talking about THC or vaping, but they're not under, there isn't, if it's possible, a watchful parent.
yeah. So the one case series that I know of. So I can't, I'm federally funded, I can't go around to dispensaries and buy, with my grant money, products and have them tested, because it's federally illegal. I'm not allowed to use federal dollars to do that. Ryan Van Drake, who's a colleague of mine who's at Johns Hopkins, sent somebody to Colorado to buy a bunch on state dollars, I guess, and they had them tested. And it's published in JAMA. I can't quote the percent right now, but Van Drake is the first author. Almost a majority of products did not have in them, by their testing, what was on the label. Yeah. So quality control is just not there. So we aren't sort of taxing and regulating the way I think we might have hoped that was going to happen.
Secondly, the steroids used for the chemical burn, is there any tracking of how much is being bought off of Amazon by people who are using perhaps products so that you're not actually counting everyone who might be having the chemical burns? Is there any way that,
I can't imagine people are buying steroids and taking off of Amazon.
I knew a lot of people who used to get Narcan and have it and use it when they were actually using those.
Yeah, so Narcan's different. Yeah. But I can't. I don't imagine that's a thing. I don't know.
I was just curious about detection. I don't know if there's a way of having, I mean, the parent exit it and say, hey, scratch your scent. This is what the menthol smells like. This is what nicotine, even the low traces smells like. This is what CBD is. So you know these different chemicals. Again, I think there's zero trace smell, but if there's something, like at least some of the things that it is, hey, my experience is if you detect on your child, you might be hanging out with the wrong crowd, or you might be doing it. So I was wondering if that's explored as a publication.
I mean, that's an interesting idea. Carla, could you speak to that? I don't know that people have. It's not like you smoke cigarettes and your clothes smell like it. You smell like it. I'm not sure vapes are like that.
Because I'll offer that I'm not to go buy these products myself and say, hey, now I know what my kids might be getting into. I doubt that people would.
It might be worth stopping in a vape shop because basically I learned some things at this table out here. I had never seen the Prism, which is, yeah.
We have at the table, if you want to stop by on the way out, we have a jewel pod, and we happen to buy the cotton candy. And we have also watermelon. So you're welcome to come over and smell those. We could consider getting some other flavors and smells, but I think the THC and stuff is probably not going to be part of our reason.
Great. Is that available at the high school or?
It's right out, it's right over here.
But it would be available after this meeting. Someplace, town hall.
Well, we can't really leave it set up because.
No, I just want to find out.
But we're trying to do different events around town.
Different parent meetings.
Parent meetings and stuff, so they can.
One thing to be aware of is the candies. I didn't have any pictures of the candies, but the candies are incredible. I've now 2 stories of weddings where somebody went. One was chocolate covered espresso beans, and the other was gummy worms. Packaged, looked just fine. People would never use. One was my boss. His son's wedding just has no memory because he had a handful of espresso beans because in the afternoon he's getting a little sleepy, and I had no idea. And then another person who's still got vertigo 5 months later required an ER visit. And there's 2 people from that wedding where they just packages of candy out front of this wedding, no sign or nothing. And when you looked at the package, there was some tiny print that contains THC, but it yeah.
I'm looking at pictures of what a finished one would look like from like a chemical burn. It could be shown to students so that they might.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna.
No,
I'm not sure I can actually find it real quick either. I could show you afterwards if you like. I've got it. I just
is, but, yeah.
So, the survey, people that you surveyed in the areas that are around us, the students and so on, they're also surveying many of these schools with, behaviors.
That's right.
So, was there a comparison of the numbers of kids that self-reported use and so on, over those, whether it was not last 3 months, or whether it was daily and so on? Did you look at those numbers to see if
So they look pretty similar. Ours is more in-depth survey in certain areas. The YRBS is fantastic, but it's a little bit, it asks fewer questions on lots of important topics. And we're not in exactly the same schools, but we're seeing the same trend. Did that not answer your question?
No, it did. I'm just wondering if, when the questions are formulated for the next one coming out, if you could have an impact on what gets asked or the questions.
Oh, I will have no impact on the youth behavior risk survey, but we are asking a few more questions now in our survey at Mass General in the schools.
What questions do you think ought to be asked? I'm not sure, to be honest. I can't list the ones that currently are there regarding vaping and use and regular.
What I think is in there for vaping is, have you ever used or have you used in the past 30 days? I think those are the questions.
Right, and that doesn't get at, you'd love to know, some kind of longitudinal, but it's
And then we have the information broken out by grade level.
And, is there, so there's no question asking if they vape with the intent to use THC in the vape?
Don't
No.
believe so.
Is that a question?
Although there are questions about marijuana use, but I
And
don't think.
how they get the marijuana, that's not.
right. And one of the problems is, up until very recently, we've been asking, do you smoke? And even do you use e-cigarettes? And they say no. You have to say, do you vape? And then they say yes. So
Yeah, you gotta be specific, precise, because they're like, oh, you didn't say that. You said something else. I mean, I had a teenager, and he's even that edible stuff. He almost collapsed in my face with an edible. And like, what's the matter with you? He just had this Kit Kat bar. And I'm like, that's a Kit Kat, and it had some marijuana, 4 grams, and he almost collapsed. Because he had the whole bar.
the good news is that he's not a heavy user. He collapsed on 4 grams. But that's our finding.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he told me I don't know if they have more, but.
So, based on the teenager that we have, so he's on medication, right, and then also vaping. And so I guess I'm wondering, like, perhaps maybe the medication is not working, that he needs to have the vaping.
I'd be happy to talk to you after this.
Before we leave, there are some things we can do to curb vaping. And particularly, there are 2 bills before the state legislature right now. And one of them would ban all flavors permanently. And the other one would raise the tax on cigarettes by $1 to make us, next to California, the 2nd highest in the country. And also put a 75% excise tax on vaping products. Right now, they're not taxed. So that's another problem. So I think I would urge everybody to call our state legislators, Representative Tammy Gouveia and State Senator Mike Barrett, and urge them to support the flavor ban. You can also urge them to support higher taxes, but most importantly, I think right now is the flavor ban.
Yeah.
So it's
Including menthol.
and with no exceptions. Thank you very good. So there is a push by the industry to exempt menthol. So this would be passing a flavor ban without any exemptions. I think it's one of the most important public health pieces of legislation that we can pass right now to reduce safety. Also, the price of products, whether it's combustible tobacco or whether it's e-cigarettes, is really helpful too, because kids are really price sensitive. So we know through studies that one of the most effective ways of reducing tobacco use is to tax the heck out of it. And it's not surprising that we have a low smoking rate in Massachusetts because we have one of the highest taxes in Massachusetts.
The tax rate is ahead of New York.
Yes, one ahead of New York. One other thing, and I'm just going to add to what Mrs. Nebraska said at the beginning of the meeting. We have an important public hearing on November 19th, November 18th, excuse me, November 18th. We're going to be hearing the testimony from the public on Board of Health's regulations that we're contemplating passing that would ban all flavors in Concord, and also move all combustible and e-cigarette products to adult-only retail stores. There aren't any right now. Doesn't mean that they couldn't be licensed, but it would certainly reduce the number of outlets that would sell these products. We would be the first town or city in the Commonwealth to do this.
That'd be great. How many places are vapes sold in Concord?
Well, right now there are 14 tobacco licenses that sell tobacco, and I'm not sure they all sell vaping products.
But at least 12 of them do.
Well, 12 sell. So this would reduce the number of outlets, and it would be a landmark regulation to go forward. Concord would be a real leader in doing this. So I would urge all of you to come out.
What time?
7 o'clock. You don't need to have all the data that you saw today. You can just simply say, I'm a parent, I have a child, I'm concerned about this. Please move forward with the regulations. This will be at
141 Kaiser Road.
first floor, 141 Kaiser Road.
Are you expecting a significant opposition?
Well, I would assume there would be some opposition, and I think it's really powerful to hear from residents.
Yeah.
That's what did it in terms of the marijuana ban in Concord. Hopefully, if we have a large turnout that supports this, we can move forward.
Yeah.
It's going to be on the town website.
Sorry?
Could you put it in the CC? Oh, put it in the CC. Oh, HSD.
It would be up to the school to decide that. I don't know if they will do that. I will ask.
She's saying, yeah, sure. I don't think I've ever done one. No, so she's saying sure.
And if I could just add one plug in terms of the town, it's really critical that as many people that are here tonight talk to their friends and neighbors about this and see if you can get as many people as possible to come to the public hearings or public meetings. It's really important that everybody engage. And in case there's a pushback that says, yeah, but you can go to Maynard, you can go to Acton, well, this is just, the conference just acting special. So I've certainly heard this as a select board member talking about this. And the answer is, we've led a lot of other charges. We led the plastic water bottle ban. We all saw how many times it took. And
It was given to me.
My point is simply, look at all the other cities and towns. We start things in Concord. So it's a point of pride. And things that we started haven't been discarded. They've actually started and they've moved forward.
And a lot of teen use, as we know, is often just opportunistic, and it does reduce a little bit the opportunistic intersection between a kid and vapes and impulsive has got $5 in their pocket, buy some single vape or something at Cumbies or wherever. And so I think it actually can.
They're not supposed to be able to buy it already. They're supposed to have ID. Isn't that true though? So that's not working? Clearly that.
Because it's not.
Giving them an ID. So we do youth compliance checks. Since the board passed the age 21 regulation in 2014, we've done 5 compliance checks. On 4 out of the 5, at doing the events, 4 or 5 stores sold to kids. So I don't think it's that the stores don't care. I think that convenience stores have really high turnover of clerks, and it's really hard to keep people trained to check IDs.
So that's good to know for parents, like, the idea that we say it's not, you can't, that my kids should be able to buy it, they should be able to. That is kind of a myth, basically, in practical, reality, it does happen.
It does happen.
Yeah.
You know, I won't say the stores don't care, but
Yeah.
they can't police every clerk that they hire.
Yeah.
Is what it comes
What's,
down to.
what's the fine for non-compliance?
It's a tiered fine structure. The first fine is $100, and usually they come in to have a little chat with the Board of Health about why they aren't checking IDs and what they're going to do to fix that.
And on the online, is that even controlled online? Does it get shipped?
All you have to do is check the box that says I'm 21, and you just check yes, and there's no
Proof of age?
Right.
nothing.
Wow.
Susie, can you spell the name of the road 141 Kites?
KDYES.
Can you buy cigarettes like that?
So the youth compliance checks used to be for cigarettes. That's how they started out. I can tell you that, so I go into these licensed tobacco retailers every now and again to check if they have the signs up that say age 21. But before it was age 21, we used to just go in and check for cigarettes. And I will tell you, 3 years ago, maybe 4 convenience stores in town had vaping products, and when I went most recently, all but 2 did. So that's, I mean, that's how the market's taken off in the past 2 or 3 years.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for coming and giving time to this important topic. And there is that display table that's on the right as you leave the building on this floor. So please take some time to look at it and see if there's something, new that you can learn from. But thank you.